Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. And today we're going to be going over the optic you see here in front of us. This is that Swampfox Optics Arrowhead 1:10 by 24 in second focal plane. They only make it in second focal plane for the Arrowhead line, and this one in particular has the Guerrilla Dot BDC reticle. Now, there's going to be quite a bit of information in this video, and I was going to start with the company and then work its way up, but I think what I'm going to do is start with the optic itself and then fill in some of that information. So let's get right into this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a screenshot that I have of the information on the screen as I read this out. It may not coincide with how it's scrolling, but it'll be there as a visual so that you can read it for yourself if you choose to do so. So from the top, magnification range is at 1 to 10x. Tube diameter is 30 millimeters. The objective lens is 24 millimeters. Exit pupil is 8 millimeters to 2.3 millimeters, going from 1x to 10x. Eye relief is 3.46 feet to 3.54 feet, going from 1x to 10x. Field of view at 100 yards is 115.6 feet to 11.5 feet, going from 1x to 10x. Click value is half MOA or 0.1 mils, dependent on the reticle. Parallax is fixed at 100 yards. Travel rotation is 60 clicks or 30 MOA. Max elevation is 100 MOA. Max windage is 100 MOA. The lenses are fully multi-coated, anti-fog, and hydrophobic. Illumination has 12 positions, 2 night vision, and 10 visual or regular settings with off settings in between. Battery runs off of CR2032. The reticle is a Guerrilla Dot BDC in this particular case, but they also have a Guerrilla Dot MOA and Guerrilla Dot Mil reticle if you choose to go that route. The reticle is true at 1x. It does have a fast focus diopter. The turret styles are push-pull, and they do lock with 0 reset. The length overall is 10.91 inches. The weight is 20.36 ounces. Waterproof rating is IPX7, which I think is 1 foot or 3 feet at 30 minutes or something like that. Not 100% sure. You can look that up if that interests you, but it's going to be just fine for anything rain-wise. It is impact resistant up to 1100 G-forces, and the warranty is 50,000 rounds. So now that that's out of the way for all the spec geeks like myself, let's go ahead and go over how it comes in the box. So in the box, or this is the box, comes as so. It's a really nice box, heavy duty actually. I would expect that it wouldn't be as nice of packaging for something at this price point, but it is very nice. So as it opens up, you have this on top, and inside it comes the optic mounted here. You have a tool which will help with adjustments, and it has a little area to open up these hold down keys for the turrets. Comes with your 2032. Comes with, in here will come your throw lever as well as an Allen key for the screws, and you get extra screws which are really nice, and being at the size of them, I think that's really awesome. They do come with flip up caps, which I'm not a fan of. I think they're kind of chintzy, and they don't really hold on to the optic very well. You also get a lens cloth, and you get your manual. Here's your manual for the optic itself, and this is for the Guerrilla Dot BDC, but inside here it also covers your other stuff, like here, like your MOA and all that other stuff. So you can see it's very detailed. I'm not going to go through this because it'll just be boring, but it's concise and to the point, and it gives you everything you need to know without giving you too much extra information. So now, just to cover about Swampfox real quick, they were founded in July 4th, or on July 4th, 2018, and they're based out of Colorado. The company is named after Francis Marion, which his nickname was Swampfox. If you don't know who Francis Marion, I highly suggest that you go and look him up. But Francis Marion was an officer in the Continental Army and a leader of the militia. And the movie The Patriot is based off of him, which is a great movie, by the way. They don't use his nickname in the movie, but that's who it is. And he's basically the grandfather of guerrilla warfare for U.S. fighting. The Swampfox optics is owned by an OEM optics company or optics manufacturer. The company that owns Swampfox, or the OEM optics manufacturer, was founded by an American and is based in Shanghai. It is one of the 2 top quality manufacturers out of China. Their marketing director, Mike Branson, if that sounds familiar to you, is known formally as PA Mike, as he used to work for Primary Arms and then made the transition to Swampfox shortly after the inception of Swampfox themselves. And this particular company has an American design team here in the US. So everything is designed here stateside, and then that design is sent up to their optics manufacturer to be brought into fruition and then go through its T&E and all that stuff. Now, the company itself, the objective of Swampfox is to bring the best bang for the buck, utilizing their parent company to build the best product at an affordable price. And if that sounds familiar, that's because that is a similar business structure to how HoloSun runs. They also have an OEM optics manufacturer, which I believe is based out of Shanghai as well. I may be wrong there. You may have to double check on that, but they do the same thing. HoloSun utilizes their OEM manufacturer to bring the best products they can at an affordable price point. So, this optic here, I've had for a couple months now. I haven't got to run it as much as I'd like to. Ammo constraints, as well as there hasn't really been many classes for me to take to really run it. I do go to the range and I'll play around with it a little bit. I've had it on other rifles to test it out, from a pistol all the way up to what you see behind this. And the reason why this is on the table here, and if this looks familiar, that's because it's been on the channel already. And this is the LWRC M6IC DI. This is their 16-inch barreled direct impingement rifle. And this is on here for 2 reasons. One, to give you a little bit of a size comparison. So as you can see, it'll sit like that. So you see how that size comparison on the rifle. Also, it's up here because this is where this optic lives. Now, I had another optic on there, and it was the Primary Arms 1-8, and I took that off and put that there because I felt like this was better suited for this, and the 1-8 I have for another project, which I'm currently working on. But I think the 1-10 in this particular configuration makes for a nice recce roll. Now, all my rifles have a particular roll. No, I'm not in the service. No, I'm not taking these on in a duty capacity roll. However, they do fit specific rolls. So if there's ever some type of crazy thing to go down, depending on what the situation is, I have a specific rig. Now, you can set up a kind of dual system, but it's going to be kind of good at a lot of things, but never really great at anything. And in this particular situation for the recce roll, for those of you who don't know what recce means, it is just a slang term for reconnaissance. And the concept itself comes from the Navy SEALs. Yeah, I know that's brought up in a lot of people's videos as far as special operations, but you have to understand a lot of these systems come from special operations needs, their operational needs, and people thinking outside of the box and saying, hey, I have some free reign here. Let me try this and see if this works better for me than what the government is telling me I need. Which I agree with, because how can the government tell you, or somebody tell you, that this is what you need for your specific situation? They're not running that situation, it's you. So for these guys to be able to do that, I think it's pretty awesome. And out of that came the recce. So the concept was to have a shorter, lighter package that was accurized and can be utilized for enclosed situations, but still reach out and touch somebody at distance. So, hence, they took M16s, put the accurized barrels on them, shortened them to 16 inches, and then, you know, some of them ran them with the A2, some of them put collapsible stocks, but either which way, it gave them the ability to engage targets at close ranges, even if they have to move in and out of structures. And then if they're in wider open environments, they can use their higher magnification optic to do a little bit of reconnaissance, as well as take out targets at further distances. And predominantly, I believe it's 500 meters, which was the intended role for these. But that being said, I think this mates up well with a 16-inch. Now, this particular reticle, and I believe all of their reticles, are to be zeroed at 50 yards. And then it'll coincide with their BDC. Now, I have it written down here somewhere. I'm trying to think. Yeah, so they're now this is for 5.56 and for 308. Now for 5.56, it was designed around XM193 or similar, with a muzzle velocity of 3101, so 3,101 feet per second, utilizing a 16-inch barrel. Or you can utilize this for 308 using Hordity 308 Winchester 155 grain with a muzzle velocity of 2,865 feet. Now that can be adjusted to your needs, but that is its intended role. Now you can use ballistic calculators if you want to use it for shorter or for longer, whatever the case may be. That is available as well, but this is what its intended use was for. So we'll talk a little bit about the reticle itself. Now the reticle, the center dot, in this case for the 1 to 10, I think it's bigger on the 1 to 6 and 1 to 8. But on the 1 to 10, the center dot is 0.8 MOA. And then you have an outer circle, which you can use to bracket for 12-inch circle plates out to distance, or at least at 100 yards or whatever the case may be. And then you have bullet drop compensation out to 800 yards. So now what I'll do is I'll post a picture of the reticle now, and then you can see that center dot with the circle on the outside. And then you have your initial vertical stadia with the horizontal stadia, and I believe that goes out to 500 yards. And then those, what you'll do is bracket the shoulders, and that'll give you a range estimation for a target. And in this particular case, range estimation is based off of a 19-inch wide shoulder, or a shoulder width of 19 inches. And then for the drops, after that you have 6, 7, and 800 yards, which are these chevrons that are really, really crisp. And you bracket them the same way with the bottoms of the chevrons. And that's how you range estimate, and then you can hold. So that's the really nice thing about this. I say it's really close to how Primary Arms does it. However, being that this is a second focal plane, you have to range at 10x. So there's that you have to keep in mind. Now for me, all of my optics are in first focal plane, and I prefer that because if I want to maintain a wider field of view, I don't have to sacrifice being able to range. And that's going to come into play later in the video when I talk about the history of how this optic came to be. Now, fast focus eyepiece is very smooth, because I'm going to go from the back to the front. Very, very smooth. When it sits, it's kind of stiff at first, and then as soon as you move it, it loosens up. It's very, very smooth. Same thing with the magnification. Now, I love this throw lever. I love how it's incorporated. You have right here, there's 4 screws, and there's 1, 2, 3 different settings. So you can customize it however you need. And it's approximately a 90-degree throw. It's very nice. Again, out of the box, it may feel a little stiff at first, but as soon as you move it, it loosens up and it's very smooth. It's not too hard that you can't throw it pretty easily, but it still has some stiffness to it where it's not going to accidentally bump easily. Moving forward, it's a 30 millimeter tube, so finding rings are going to be pretty easy. Excuse me. You have your dials here. So on the left side here, this is your illumination. And as you can see, if I can bring that up closer, I really got to get a camera. Stop using my phone. But anyway, you'll see there's up to 12 settings. Your first 2 are night vision. And then you have 10 settings. Now this is, to an extent, daylight bright. But it's not something that I would run like a red dot in a red dot capacity, because it's not going to function like that. However, the etch reticle is going to allow you to do that just fine. It's just going to be a little bit of a training issue, especially if you're coming from a red dot or holographic, where you're used to having that illuminated reticle draw your eye in. It'll take a little bit to get used to. However, once you do, it's very easy to use. And also, it has off settings in between, which usually you typically find in higher end optics, but I think that this is really nicely done, and I wish all optics would do this. And then on the outside here, this is for your your battery. So it's just this little case out here, or this cap here. You unscrew it, and it's got fine threads on it. There is your 2032. You see it's pretty fine threads, and then there's an O-ring there to help out with being waterproof to an extent. So up top here we have your elevation turret. Let me just finish this here. So how this works is you'll pop this up, and then you can make your adjustments, which are audible and very tactile. There's the slightest mush, like going in between, like really slight. And I've had higher end optics that don't have as good of turrets as this. And then you pop it back down, and there's somewhat of like a suction effect. So when you pull up, there's quite a bit of resistance. And then let's see if you can hear this. So there's definitely some type of a suction effect. And then here you go with same thing with the windage. So very nice turrets. And if I have to have exposed turrets, which I prefer having cap turrets, but in this particular case, being it's a 1 to 10, allows you to reach out further. This makes sense because you can make an adjustment if you need to do so. You can make your adjustments and then set it back, which it does have a 0 reset. So there it is. And then when you lift it up, I don't know if you'll be able to see that. Sorry, there's a little red triangle underneath that lines up with it. So glass clarity is really nice. It is you could tell it's got a wide field of view. It's crisp and it's really bright. It's a nice bright image. It's clean. I have some pictures here. I'll roll them in. I took a picture of my primary arms 1 to 8, this optic, and then my primary arms GLX 2.5 to 10. Obviously the 1 to 8 is at 8 power, and then these two are at 10 power. All taken yesterday. It was overcast, and in my opinion, this one had the nicest image out of all of them. And excuse me, this one had the nicest image, and I was able to see my bullet holes in the paper at 100 yards much easier with this one than even the 2.5 to 10 at 10 power, which to an extent kind of frustrates me, because you would think that 2.5 to 10 is supposed to have better glass, and it's like $700 for that optic, and then here I am with this, which MSRP is at basically $550, $549.99. And you know, I don't know, but this is really nice. And actually, the fact that this looks as nice as it does makes me wonder how nice can some of their higher end stuff go when it comes to their long range optics. So, which are all at sub $1,000. So I think they're all sub like $700. So this is a really nice optic. Again, if I haven't done so already, I'll roll in the pictures of the images from the optics comparing. Here's the caps. I'm not a fan of these. They feel kind of cheap, and they don't hold onto the optic real well. Like they're not sized properly, but they're there. Typically, if I'm going to run this for any reason, these will just come off, and they only stay on them while they're in storage or in the safe or whatnot. So I really like this optic. Now there are codes that you can use to get this cheaper. Now if you're prior service, you can get a code. Being that I work overnight waiting for an email, I tend to be a little bit impatient, so I just used the code from the Daily Shooter, and I think I got this for like a little over $450, just over $450, which is an amazing deal for this particular optic. I mean, it's for the 1-10, it's beautiful. I highly recommend it. If there's one thing that I can personally change on this, it would be a first focal plane, and I stated my reasons already. Now that we're at this point, I want to get into the background on this optic. Now, where did I put my reference sheet? All right, let's post that right there. So, this particular optic, they started with a 1-10. When they designed this, they designed it knowing they wanted a 1-10. And that's how they designed it. They started out with the 1-10. They got all the science, the math, everything they wanted to get done in this particular optic. And then got prototypes built. And then once they figured out this is the direction we want to go and we have it where we want it, they trickled all that information down and utilized it to make their 1-8 and 1-6. So, really, really, really nice. It's not like where they started with a 1-6 and then tried to work their way up, which could be problematic. It's easier to go backwards. It's kind of like being a receiver in the NFL, right? If you're running full speed, it's easier for you to come back to the ball than try to chase the ball down. You know what I mean? So if you're running your route and you're half-assing that route and that ball comes your way and now you got to pick up speed, it's almost impossible to chase that ball down because it's moving so fast, as opposed to slowing down and then you can adjust and make that catch. And it's the same concept when it comes to designing something at a higher end or a 1-10 and then using that to scale it back to a 1-8 and 1-6. Now, I'm no engineer, but in my mind, doing some research, it seems like this is the easier route to go than to start with a 1-6 or a 1-4 and then work its way up. So, as they were testing their prototypes, they were reached out to by a special forces group, and they must have caught wind that they were working on a 1-10, and they were looking at a 1-10 for use. And as they were getting it to talking, they were like, look, do you mind if we send you a couple of these prototypes for testing? Run them on your scars, because they didn't verify that they were running scars. I said, run them on your scars, run them as hard as you can, break them if you can, and then send them back to us, and then we'll figure out what went wrong and how we can make it better. So what they did was they sent it out to these special forces guys, did everything they had to do, and then at the end of the testing, which if I remember correctly, they ran about 50,000 rounds, they went ahead and said, we're going on deployment soon and we want to take these with us. Now, they couldn't take those in particular because they were prototypes. However, Swampfox was able to accommodate and send out a couple 1-10s configured correctly, and they ran them during their deployment, which I believe was from January 2020 to July 2020. And they actually used them in combat, and they actually loved them. They held up fine. They did everything they were supposed to do, and they performed as they would. Now, this particular group was Special Forces Operation Detachment Alpha, and it was 7116 Alpha Company, 1st Battalion, 7th Special Forces Group Airborne. They used to be based out of Fort Bragg many years ago when I was there, and then now they are based out of Florida. They use this as saw combat, and when they returned from deployment, they sent them the very first one. They sent them back to Swampfox, the very first optic, or the very first Arrowhead 1 to 10 that was used in combat, in a shadow box with a certificate, as well as a shadow boxed flag. And it was the very flag that was flown over their base from June 15th to July 15th before they came home. There was only one issue that they had with the optics, and that was with the throw levers, which they had broken a couple of, which in my opinion is the least of anybody's worry when it comes to these. And they said that if they could make one change, it would be to see it in the first focal plane, which I had came to that conclusion prior to even seeing or hearing the story about this, and then that just solidified my thinking on it, having used first focal plane versus second focal plane, and being predominantly first focal plane. And I went this route saying, you know what, I'll give second focal plane a chance in an LVPL and see how it goes. And I feel the same way. Now, this is completely serviceable. You can use this however you want. Just know that if you have to range using the reticle, you have to do it in 10x, which minimizes your field of view. And I don't like being kind of pigeonholed into a specific area. So all this information you can find out on SHOT Show. The information, excuse me, about Swampfox as a company, you can find on jerkingthetrigger.com and air15.com's forum. And then the information pertaining to this optic here and the backstory to the optic you can find on Swampfox's YouTube page, which if you go down to the video SHOT Show 2021 Day 4, they'll talk about all this and you'll see the shadow box and all that other stuff. Now, this is going to go into my next point, that they are working on a first focal plane variant, which they show in that video. And that one is codenamed Warhorse, and my guess is that's exactly what it's going to be when it is released, which they said would be released the end of Q3, which should be right around this time frame. And it'll be utilizing their new design reticle, or their new reticle, which is called the BRC. And it is a very nice, very, very nice reticle. It kind of looks, I wish I can post a picture of it, but if you watch that video, you'll see. And then, so when they illuminate, like this one has an illuminated reticle and the whole reticle illuminates. That one doesn't illuminate the whole reticle. It only illuminates the center section and then one little section at the bottom. And what that is meant for is for your holdover at close distances. So if you're on 1 power, that bottom one is going to be like a red dot, and you can, at close distances, come up and take your shot, and that's your holdover. And it's already built right into the reticle for short distances or short engagements, especially if you're working within like 15 meters or so. Excuse me. But when you expand it, it does have a Christmas tree, so there is some type of BDC built into the reticle, similar to like the Griffin reticle from Primary Arms, and then you have your Christmas tree, which will allow you to hold off for windage and range as well with mils. I think it's every so many mils, 0.0 whatever mils, but it looks really good. That one's going to be in a 34 millimeter tube. They didn't have a price available for it because they said they wanted to get the optic just right, and then once they got it right, they would figure out costs later. In my opinion, I am super excited for that one. I love this. This is one of my favorite optics, to be completely honest. I've been on the Primary Arms train for a long time. I still love Primary Arms. I love their Raptor. I love their Raptor M2 reticle, their Griffin mill reticle. But I feel like this incorporates better glass, seeing it out of the naked eye rather than doing camera. I feel like this has better glass and has a better field of view. So, very, very good optic. I highly suggest it if you're looking for a 1 to 10. Very, very nice. I love the fact that the Swampfox is not too gaudy and it's blacked out. And the only thing that's really out there is just this. There's insignia and then your MOA and all that stuff. So it's good. It comes in 3 different reticle designs. You have your Guerrilla Dot BDC, Guerrilla Dot MOA, and Guerrilla Dot Mil reticles, and you can get them in 2 different colors. They offer it in red and they offer it in green. I have not seen one in green, but the red is really bright. I think that the red illumination is brighter in this optic than it is in the primary arms optics. That being said, and it's a hell of a lot brighter than, say, like my Tractoric UHD, which is basically a $2,000 optic, and this one is way brighter than that. So very good optic for the money, especially if you can use a code. It's definitely going to help you out, and I highly suggest this optic if you're looking at something for a recce or even a mini recce build. Just know if you're going to go the mini recce build, you'll have to use a ballistic calculator or something like Strayarc or whatever it is, to find out what your holds would be once you find out what your muzzle velocity and all that stuff is. So if you have any questions, please leave them down in the comment below. If you have any suggestions, you can leave them down below. You guys know, if you do leave anything, I do comment back. And I will see you in the next video.